are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Oh, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Hello and welcome to episode number 18 of James Bond Radio. I'm Tom Sears and I've got my good buddy Chris Wright. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris. 18, that's
I
not
know,
bad.
Dude. We're getting on, aren't we? We're getting
I
on.
know.
Yeah.
God, we're going to hit the old 2 zeros soon.
We're going to have to do something special, you know, for the anniversary for the 20th.
Yeah, the 20th. I think we can come up with something pretty tasty.
Yeah. We'll see. Well, maybe we'll broadcast in the nude or something like that. How about that?
Yeah.
Be a treat for the ladies.
Sounds good, yeah. So long from the neck up will be nude. So that's right.
That is true.
Yeah.
So it's bloody hot in England lately, isn't it?
Well, I've been sweating my balls off,
Yeah. It's,
But no, it has been.
If there's a little whirring in the background, it's because I've got a fan blowing in my face because it's just that hot. It's ridiculous.
And if there's a bit of paper rattling, it's because can't afford a fan, so I've got a paper instead.
There you go. But in true British form, we can't complain when it's hot because otherwise the rest of the year it's always pissing down and we're always moaning about that. So bring it on, bring on the sunshine. That's what I say.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so today we're reviewing William Boyd's Solo, which we both read a little while ago. I got my copy here. You got your copy there. Lovely stuff. Very, very excited to get stuck into this book. We both read it. I read it reasonably recently. I know you read it earlier than I did, but we've both had a little revisit and kind of freshened up on it for today's review. But before we crack on, come and join us on Facebook, which is just type in James Bond Radio into the search. Join us on Twitter, which is at James Bond Radio. And if you could come to our iTunes page and leave us a nice, tasty, glowing 5-star review, that really helps us to rank higher on iTunes. We get more listeners naturally and all that kind of stuff. So that really, really helps us. And if you miss us in the weeks where we're not broadcasting, come and do our ultimate quiz, which you can do on jamesbondradio.com and just sign up in the little box and you get a bonus 2-hour episode, which isn't on iTunes or anything like that. Sorry, I spoke over you then, Chris. I feel awful. What happened?
Well, no, that's fine. All I was going to say is that obviously if anyone wants to leave us a voice mail as well on SpeakPipe, then that would be brilliant as well. We want to hear your thoughts and...
That's very true. You know what happened this week, actually, as we put out a challenge, didn't we, last time for a bit of turning the guess the quote round out to the listeners, and we got one. We got one. Good old faithful Matthew Grice,
and it was a good one.
It was a good one, and we've got a split decision. I think I think you're right. Not that you've told me who you think it is, but I think I know who you think it is.
Yeah,
and I think you're probably right, but there's a feeling in me that it might be somebody else who I know you don't think it is. So it'll be interesting when we do that at the end. That was a confusing sentence, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So there we go. So we got an email recently about from Guernsey Post in the Channel Islands, and they're releasing a limited edition set of Ian Fleming stamps, which are quite the collector's item apparently. And I think there's a set of 6 of them, and they've got old classic photos of Fleming at various stages of his life, which are really cool. And they wanted us to mention it. So if you're into stamps and stamp collecting and Bond stuff, go and check that out. There wasn't really a solid website for it, but if you type in Guernsey Post Ian Fleming stamps into Google, you can find the info page on the Guernsey Post website, and you can see those. So quite the collector's item.
And they're not only valid to post mail in the Channel Islands, are they? I'm sure if you wanted to use them,
absolutely, you could. If you wanted to, you could post things with them anywhere in the world. I would imagine. Yeah.
If someone sent me a letter and had an Ian Fleming stamp, I'd be like, yes, get on it straight away.
I'd have that. I'd have some of that, definitely.
Yeah, too right.
So let's spin it over. What's been happening in the world of Bond 24 lately, Chris?
We've got a bit of exciting. Well, I'd say it's pretty exciting news. Like last time, we weren't quite sure. We heard a bit about the script writing. Now we're getting a bit more into the actual film production side of things. So it was an interesting one. There's the stunt coordinator, Gary Powell, who's working on Bond 24. He had some Instagram photos that he put online, which suddenly disappeared not long after. And these photos were potentially of Bond 24 locations. And they showed other members of the Bond production fraternity. There was Callum McDougall, who's the exec producer, and I think there were one or two others. So you kind of like, okay, we know what's happening here.
Okay, so he's taken some photos, and they've since vanished from Instagram.
Yeah,
they're of various locations, and some of those pictures featured other members of the Bond 24 team.
Indeed.
Well, that's in the bag then, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, in the bag as a scout, as a location
that's
scout.
True. Yeah.
So because they might, they've got to scout a few things. So the pictures he had were of Morocco, Rome, and Austria. Now those three are quite interesting, really. Obviously, if we start with Morocco's an interesting choice because obviously in Living Daylights he went to Tangier, and so that was kind of like, I suppose, rather than. I mean, obviously Morocco's a big place and there are other towns he could go to, but it'd be interesting to see what sort of take they were thinking, what sort of spin on it. Likewise, really, with Austria, he went to, Bregenz in Quantum.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was quite a contained bit within the opera and stuff.
It's my favourite scene in Quantum, that is.
It's an amazing scene, a brilliant scene. And again, in Living Daylights, he was in Vienna, which is a really great scene as well. So... I mean, were they looking potentially at skiing, or was it? It's.
Well, I heard a rumor that old Mendes had been out skiing earlier in the year, so I predict we're going to get some skiing in Bond 24. Now, I've got a question I'm going to throw at you.
Yeah,
right now.
go for it.
Tell me why Bond went to Bregenz in Quantum.
Why? Because he's interested in the opera, isn't he? And he's a man of culture. Why else would you want to go there? I think didn't M or one of the MI6 sort of mention that thingies. They mentioned that Dominic Green's plane was landing in Bregenz.
So he goes to Bregenz, and what does he find in Bregenz?
He finds a
secret meeting with the members of Quantum, Chris.
That is exactly what he finds. Yes.
So if he goes back to Bregenz, right?
Yeah.
He might be going to look for Quantum again.
Well, slap my ass and call me Judy.
And Quantum might turn out to be a name for Spectre. A cover name. Oh, eh?
Well, you know what? That could be right. And he doesn't even have to go to Bregenz again, because why? I mean, would they be that stupid to, I don't know, let's meet in the same place where, Bond caught us last time. But... yeah, potentially go to Austria. Who knows? That's good thinking, though.
It'll be interesting to see how they play the whole Quantum thing, right?
Yeah.
If it ever shows up again or not. Because, back in the day, you had the first, 5 Bond films that were kind of, exception of Goldfinger, were all kind of Spectre-based. And you'd see, Hidden Blofeld with his pussycat and all that kind of stuff. And then... there was that flow of continuity. But these days, I feel like they treat audience goers like they've got no memory. So 2008 was a long time ago now. So I don't know whether by the time it comes out 2015, that's going to be like a 7-year gap. And I don't know whether they would think that people would go, what's all this quantum shit all about? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I don't think from the audience point of view people would, because it's been such a big thing about this Quantum thing. It was in Casino, it was in Quantum, obviously. So from an audience perspective, I think people want something around that to happen, because it's almost as if, okay, we've seen it, but it's not finished. There's still something there. And if it's never alluded to again, it's almost it would feel worse than if they did bring it in. And every man and his dog wants Quantum to be Spectre, and I mean, it'd be so good.
See, there is that, but there's also the thought that Mendes purposefully didn't include Quantum in Skyfall, because Silver could have been an offshoot of something to do with Quantum, or he could have been investigating Quantum when M sold him out. Do you know what I mean? And there was no mention of it at all. And because he's coming back, maybe he's not going to be into that, because he has said, hasn't he, that he Bond 24 is a continuation of Skyfall, continuing on those themes.
Oh, that's true.
Whatever that means exactly, I don't know, but I would imagine it's exploring Bond's past again, I would have thought.
Well, if Quantum isn't in Bond 24 or Bond 25... I still think at some point something should happen around that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a long time and it's strange, but for me, it's worse to have something that's not finished or tied up, basically. Yeah. For me, that's always going to be niggling at me, saying, "Well, come on, you know." Even if it was just a pre-title sequence where he
drops somebody down a chimney.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, I haven't heard of that one before. But you know, I'd like to see something happen. But maybe this is Mendes' way of throwing people off the scent. Maybe. True. This is, you know, his way of saying, I have one saying quantum. I'm not going to tell them that it's definite because, you know, that's just spoils everything. Yeah. So perhaps that's the way.
Interesting.
So it'll be. We'll have to see how it goes. The other interesting thing as well with the locations was that it was heavily rumoured that the Rome location is going to feature a car chase with a new Aston Martin.
Ooh.
So straight away I'm thinking, wow, this is great. But then I'm also thinking, well, hang on a minute, Quantum, you know, I know we said 2008, but in terms of the films, wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And it had a car chase in Italy with an Aston, albeit a brilliant car chase.
Yeah.
But what if they do a car chase through sort of Rome? Obviously, you've got the architecture, you've got the surroundings, the location, it will look fab. But they need something original about it. They need... Not just a car chase with trucks and guns and spinning, and although that's good, you'll need something original. And I just hope they do it.
I'll tell you how I feel about that. I feel like the pre-title sequence to Skyfall was a poor man's Casino ripoff.
What, with the car?
Not with the car, no. In the sense that it was just like, you know, you got the very, very opening scene. And then
God.
You've got the chase.
For Skyfall, sorry. Yeah,
you've got the chase on foot, then you got chase on a motorbike, then on top of a train. And it was just Bond after one person, exactly as it was in Casino.
Yeah.
And it was just, it felt to me a bit like that intro to Casino was so mind-blowingly amazing. And this to me felt like, right, well, how can we compete with that chase? So let's throw in some bikes and let's go on the top of the Grand Bazaar and then let's go on top of a train, you know? So,
and then shout, Volkswagen VW Beetles.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like,
yeah. So it's kind of it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's like if there's going to be a car chase, it's got to be a completely different set of stakes. I suppose it's different though, isn't it? Because if you think about Quantum, it was Bond escaping, so he's being chased by like 4 or 5 dudes.
Yeah.
If it's the other way around, where it's Bond in pursuit of somebody else, then the whole dynamic of it changes, doesn't it? So
that's true. That's true. It'll be interesting to see. I just hope, you know, it's good, it's original. I'd like to see the new Aston, so that'll be good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we've got some stuff to talk about now, because there was a point where we were both a bit like, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
It's not too far away.
Nothing's
What's happening?
Yeah. It's funny. There's interesting locations as well, isn't it? Because like Rome isn't, you know, you had Siena, Italy in Quantum. So it's kind of, you know, it's very Bondian locations though, Austria, Rome and Tangiers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Especially Rome, because obviously he's been sort of Venice and he's been Italy. But Rome is almost like such a big city that he hasn't been to before. You know, London, Paris. You think about all these major cities, New York, so on. But, you know, Rome is like
that's
a big...
That's a good point. He has never been to Rome, has he?
No, it's a big capital city and he's not been there.
He must have been to Rome, surely. Is he not?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't think so. No.
Good Lord. Well, that's a shocker. Yeah, interesting.
In which case, that is a great location, the fact that he hasn't been there.
Yeah.
That, to my knowledge, anyway, I don't think he has.
Interesting. So with the roundup of stuff, we've got Scandinavian Bond girl.
We have.
I think there's a British Bond girl as well, isn't there?
The British one's meant to be the main character, apparently, and the Scandinavian's like either the femme fatale or
the evil one who changes sides halfway through when he bones her. Yeah,
exactly. Or the pre-titles
Yeah.
quickie, but I think it's the second one. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And then we've got these locations. So we still don't have a great deal to go on, but it's enough to tantalise and get me speculating about Spectre at the very least.
Yeah. Keep us going until next time.
Yeah.
Cool.
But there we go. So is that's all our Bond 24 news for this week?
That's all so far, yeah.
Well, I thought I seem to recall seeing a message from Barbara Broccoli on our Facebook saying that she wants you as the next James Bond. So
that is true. That is true.
Happy birthday for last week, by the way.
Oh, thanks, man.
Our Facebook followers would see that I mangled together a picture of Chris's head pasted onto Roger Moore's body from The Spy Who Loved Me as a little online birthday card.
I thought that was me when I went to Egypt. Was it not?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
No, that wasn't you. But
Oh.
it was from Spy Who Loved Me. But
Okay.
but I can understand why you would think it might have been you,
Yeah,
because I would say it looked bloody good, man. Like,
Really?
yeah, I thought you looked quite mean and quite like ruthless. I think you looked
Well-
quite a good ruthless Bond.
I think it was the Photoshop quality that must have done it.
Well, there you go. How about that? So I made quite the discovery recently, Chris. I don't know whether you want to hear about this.
James Bond underpants.
Well, I do have a pair of James Bond underpants, as I've shown you in the past. I remember when we were walking around Bond in Motion at Bewley, and I thought I happened to be wearing them, and I thought I'm going to show these to Chris.
There you go. That could be our 20th anniversary podcast.
There you go. It says "Licensed to Thrill" around the waistband, and then there's like a gun barrel around the gentleman's area. I like them. They're my lucky pants for sure. But no, that wasn't the discovery I
Okay.
made.
Yeah.
My discovery I made is the secret formula to every Bond song ever written. Right.
Right.
Now this
Which
is really
is?
interesting. Right.
Okay.
Now I was having a noodle on the old guitar. I've got my little guitar with me.
Nice.
Right. And I realised that the last 3 Bond songs are written with exactly the same chords.
Really?
Right? Now I'm going to demonstrate.
Right.
Now I don't know how many Bond JBR listeners are kind of musically inclined, so I'm going to explain things in layman's terms, right? I know
Which will help me as well. so-
exactly. Yeah, I know. We've got a few musical listeners. Now look, we got these chords. We got B minor, we got G, and we got E. Now when
Ooh,
I play those, you immediately know what that is, don't you?
That sounds super.
Na, 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 na. Right?
That sounds good.
If you
I like
take
that.
a life, didn't do it, right? You got that. So
Yeah.
then I thought, hang about, that reminds me of something else. So I did this. Same chords, exactly the same thing. Blue, 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 blue.
Yeah.
Which is obviously Another Way to Die.
Yeah. quite
And then I
serious.
thought, hang about, that reminds me of something else. And then if you go like this, again, same chords.
Wow.
Sing along, Chris.
I
Right?
That's beautiful.
It's Skyfall.
Yeah.
Right? So the last 3 Bond films, all exactly the same chords. So I've discovered the Bond chord sequence, right? Because then what I do is I do this and I change it from a B minor to a B major, which is pretty much the same chord, just 1 note difference. And I get this,
Right.
which is what? It's Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Which is also Licensed to Kill. Got to hold on to your feel loving.
What?
Right?
Yeah.
Licensed to Kill. So there's the chords.
Wow.
Isn't
Any
that,
more?
Isn't that quite incredible? There's probably more.
I
There's the
think
ones,
they probably do, yeah.
yeah. But there it is. Isn't that incredible?
Wow. That's good. So basically, David Arnold's been ripping off the Goldfinger
Yeah.
tune and then
Yeah.
Exciting a bit.
And Adele, she did the same thing. So I'm going to throw out a prediction, right? That the next one for Bond 24,
Bond 24
is going to be that same chord sequence again.
I reckon. It's
3
a good
times
one,
in a
though.
row. Yeah,
It is a good
absolutely.
one.
I'm not complaining. All great songs. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting little nugget.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so right on to Bond trivia. Let's hear it. What have you got for me?
Okay, so I've got a. This is going to be a tricky one because obviously, and we said this earlier before we started recording, is that
Right.
it's different when it's book stuff, isn't it? Because with movies, you watch them 100 million times over and over again. You can recite every line. With books, you probably only read them once in a while because it's a much bigger time investment. So
Yeah.
I think the trivia questions might be a little bit trickier this time around, but I'm going to go for it and see what happens.
Okay.
This
Let's
one's
see.
reasonably gettable, I think.
Okay.
Okay, so my trivia question of the day, which we will reveal the answer to at some point in today's episode, is in the later part of Solo, Bond travels under the name Bryce Fitzjohn, and we get this line. He had used the name Bryce as a pseudonym before in the early 1950s as an alias for a long train journey he'd made from New York to St. Petersburg, Florida. He'd been John Bryce then, and it had worked very well. Now, what I would like to know is in what story, what book, did Bond go by the name John Bryce as his pseudonym?
That's a good question.
Thank you
very
very
good
much.
question. And one that I'm going to have to guess. But no, that's good. I like it. Very good. Okay, so for my trivia, I've kind of cheated a bit because although it's related to the book, it's still filmic. Is that allowed?
Yes.
I'll go with it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing as a book is set in Africa and all things African, my question is, in which Bond films is it set in Africa? Which Bond films have locations in Africa?
Do we get a number of how many there are, or do we just have to?
I've got, not including the unofficial, I've got, 5, and one or two of those a little bit sneaky.
Interesting.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think 1, 2, 3. No, four you should get, and then there's one that's a little bit sneaky. But
4 of them have scenes in Africa.
yeah,
I can only think of one.
they'll come. I reckon.
All right, interesting.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, so let's crack on with our book review now. I think before we go any further, we should just say, like, we're not going to pull any punches. So if you haven't read the book, it's going to be spoiler filled from start to finish. So if you haven't read Solo yet, probably best to press stop now, go and read it, and then listen to this afterwards because we're going to ruin the whole thing for you.
Scan read it in about the next 10 seconds. Might
Yeah,
work.
if you can do that, yeah. What was that film in the 80s? Do you remember that?
25 Short Circuit.
Is it? More Inford. That was wicked. I'm surprised they haven't remade that, actually.
They will do at some
Yeah,
point,
I'm sure they will. Cool. So I think before we actually talk about the story and that, how did you sort of feel about William Boyd coming on board and the kind of the state of literary Bond before you read Solo?
Well, I mean, I didn't know anything, in all honesty, about William Boyd. I know he'd done a couple of film-related things that were related to Bond in some way, but I didn't quite know what. In terms of the whole sort of literary sort of world of Bond, basically, I read the last few. So I read Carte Blanche when that came out. I read Devil May Care when that came out. And I've read the Flemings, but not for some time, so it'll be good to go back. Yeah. And then the Gardners and the Bensons, I've read the odd one or two, but I haven't read them all yet. But because these have been almost event things, almost a bit like the films, these over the last few years, these single, continuation books have come out. And you've seen them going down the Thames, and you've seen the Bentleys and all, and for Solo the jet, the interceptors and all this sort of marketing. So it does pull you in a bit, and you think, okay, we'll give it a go. And it got me excited for it. I think because it had been quite a while. Obviously, the last one was a few years beforehand. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, Carte Blanche was what, 2008, wasn't it?
8, I think it was 8 or 9.
Yeah, it was a while ago, wasn't it? Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I remember the plan with Ian Fleming Publications was back in the day they were going to do the thing where they had a different named author releasing one book at a time kind of thing. That was like an old idea that they've only recently started doing. And it's an interesting one. And I think where you sort of fall down is the fact that if you did a series, you've got some continuity there. Yeah. You've got more of a feel for it. Whereas if you're just doing one-off hits, and it's kind of odd because the last 3 are just completely unrelated to each other. Especially Carte Blanche being set in the present day with, it's a bit odd. Yeah. And I must admit, I do have mixed feelings about those last 2 books. I thought Devil May Care was a decent entry, but to me, it just literally felt like he'd read through all the Flemings, stole ideas, changed them a bit, and then just put them in a book. There was that thing about the vehicle that looked like an animal, the tennis match where he's cheating. Yeah. It just felt a bit too much like, well, here's a template of Flemingness. Here's a new book, and it just felt a bit, I don't know, a bit of a rip off to me, to be honest. Yeah. How did you feel about Devil May Care?
Actually, pretty much the same. I remember reading it because obviously that was the first continuation book for a long time. And with all the hype and everything, and I remember thinking, there were some nice Bond moments in it, but overall, I probably wouldn't have read it again. Yeah,
I feel the same. There's that weird thing of him writing as Ian Fleming as well, which is kind of strange. Yeah. Carte Blanche, again, I don't know. Carte Blanche for me was a funny one. It didn't feel like Bond for me. It felt just, obviously everything's radically updated. There was some nice touches, but again, it just didn't. I thought the villain in that was great.
Yeah, I was just about to say he was quite. He had that sort of sadistic and a bit strange and into the whole death and the morbid side of things,
like necrophilia and stuff, which I thought was a real nice touch. But the one thing I find is like when I'm reading literary Bond, I've got this image in my mind. It's none of the actors, but it's like a picture of Bond as I read him. Whereas for some reason, with that book, I couldn't picture what he looked like. It was really strange. It just didn't quite feel like Bond for me, that one. Yeah. But then William Boyd comes along, and I'd never read any of his stuff before, and I'd sort of vaguely knew of him, so I was excited to try something new. Some of the early stuff that came out about it being set in period and all that kind of stuff, I was like, yes, that's what we want. That's good stuff. Yeah. And that was it. So I was excited to get stuck in. One of the strange things is, like I said, it was like a really quiet release. It almost felt like it just came out and nobody really knew about it. If you remember with Devil May Care, it was like huge fanfare, loads of marketing, like you say, going down the Thames and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with this, it was just like a really quiet release at the Dorchester Hotel, a few cars outside, and that was it, really.
Yeah, they had the old Jensen Interceptors, and I think they went to an airport and then they were dropped off at various countries, but aside from that, that's all I pretty much heard about it, really.
Well, in terms of the actual sales figures, it was I got this info which says basically Boyd's Solo sold 25,000 hardbacks in the UK in its first 4 weeks. Although this made it the worst selling of the 3 new Bond novels since 2008, Fawkes' Devil May Care sold a whopping 100,000 copies in the same period, while Jeffrey Deaver's Carte Blanche sold 37,000 copies. Solo still significantly outsold Boyd's most recent novel, written in his own voice, Waiting for Sunrise, of which 13,000 copies were bought in the first 4 weeks. So it's it didn't sell particularly well in relation to the other two, but again, there was no real marketing push for it either. So you wouldn't, what's it going to do? And at the same time, it was released on the same day as a new Stephen King, which was a big event in the literary world. So I think it sort of slipped under the radar a little bit there.
But I think the figures have gotten better for it following that. So it's kind of equivalent of a film with a box office release, but some of them have a longer, longevity beyond those first few weeks. And similar with the book, I think it's gotten better. Yeah, should stay the distance, as it were, a bit longer.
So should we crack on, and then we'll talk about the actual the story.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's do it. So remember, if you haven't read this yet, probably best to press stop, or if you don't care, just keep listening anyway. But I implore you to read this book because I personally think it's fucking brilliant. Anyway, so we open up with James Bond having a little dream, don't we? And it's funny because Fleming does that a lot, and Bond's always having a dream, waking up from a nightmare and stuff. And what I thought was a really, really nice touch is he's having a dream and a flashback to when he was 19 in the middle of D-Day, D-Day +1, like the day after the landing. And he's basically a part of 30 Assault Unit, which, as we all know, is Ian Fleming's unit of commandos that he put together in World War II, which I thought was a brilliant touch, and it made me smile even before I'd got off the first page. What did you think? I
think that was very clever, and it was nice, and it's a good. It was really good to see Bond, in the thick of combat, not being skilled or not being experienced in it. I thought that was a very sort of clever way of opening the book. I liked it. I really did like it. I thought it was a great sort of sort of idea.
I think it's a funny one, isn't it? It's like there's a whole part of Bond's history that we just don't know about yet, which I'm hoping at some point the young Bond series will kind of get to the young adult Bond in his late teens, early 20s and stuff, when we experience all that wartime stuff, because that would be amazing.
That would be great.
But yeah, I thought that was a great little touch. But then obviously he wakes up and he's having a little dream, and it's his birthday, and he's in the Dorchester Hotel in London, very posh, very nice. And then I think the opening part, this section kind of really sets it up well, because it's kind of like Bond, he's feeling a bit under the weather, he's got a sore throat, a bit of a cold, goes down eating breakfast on his own at the hotel, and then there's a rather lovely lady who's eating breakfast kind of opposite him, and they have a little flirt and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, again, I smiled again at this, because there's the description of her. She's Bryce Fitzjohn, the kind of, I suppose, the closest thing to the Bond girl we have in this, really. Yeah. And there's a description of her which just kind of stinks of Fleming, like just the way he does it. So where is it? Page 7. Okay, so here it goes. She was a tall, rangy woman in her mid-30s, Bond estimated, with a strong, handsome face and thick honey blonde hair brushed back from her forehead and falling in an outward curve to her shoulders. Blue eyes, Scandinavian. She was wearing a jersey all-in-one navy catsuit with an ostentatious gold zip that ran from just above her groin to her neck. Very nice. The tightness of the close-fitting material revealed the full swell of her breasts. Now, Fleming was always banging on about tits, wasn't he? Every time he would describe a woman in the books, it was always talking about the swell of the boobies.
Yeah, like Cubby Broccoli, they were both boob men.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Bond allowed the nature of his carnal appraisal to register in his eyes for a split second and saw her own eyes flash back. Message received. Now,
I like that.
That's great. That sounds like a Fleming description right out of the bag. So 2 hits for me straight away. I'm like, yes and yes. He's got the right feel and the right tone. I
like the way that when they're in the restaurant and he remembers back to the night before and they were both eating and drinking by themselves, clocked one another, and then cheersed one another across the room.
Yeah,
I thought that was really, really nice sort of moment.
Yeah,
and straight away it makes them have that connection, beyond anyone else in that room at the time, and it just worked. I thought it was really clever, and it was it had that mystery to it as well, which obviously Bond sort of goes for, that sort of thing.
Well, I thought it was kind of almost like they're kindred spirits in the sense, because he's there celebrating his birthday on his own. Yeah. She's there celebrating the 4th anniversary of her divorce on her own. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of, if there was ever a female counterpart to Bond, I think that kind of sets it up perfectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like the first bit of the book, he's just literally swanning around on his own, just kind of chilling out. He goes back home, goes to eat some breakfast, has a lot of scrambled eggs as usual.
There's so much description of food and drink in this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is what Fleming did all the time anyway. Yeah. But he does eat a lot.
I feel like sometimes in the Flemings, like you'll read them and it's like, dude, I've heard enough about the scrambled eggs, man. Like, you don't quite need to go into this amount of detail. But it is what it is. It does make me laugh. But yeah. So what I found interesting is he goes to Cafe Picasso just on the King's Road, and I thought, I wonder if that's a real place. And I looked it up, and it is in fact a real place. So we're going to have to, next time we're in London together, we're going to have to go to Picasso's, 127 King's Road. So we're going to there and have some scrambled eggs and orange juice.
Did they do scrambled eggs?
Yeah. That's what he has, I think.
If they do in real. Then we're there.
So as he's sort of bumbling around, he happens to see like the movie poster with Astrid Ostergaard, which is Bryce Fitzjohn's stage name. So he finds out she's an actress and all that kind of stuff. So it's just basically, it's quite a quiet start aside from the dream at the very beginning. It's quite a quiet start. He's just kind of milling around. And then obviously Bryce invites him to the little party at her house,
which he declines to start with, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's kind of a bit wary because he wonders whether it's too much of a coincidence, doesn't he? He's on edge and stuff, and he's not sure whether she's like an opposite number trying to like track him down or something like that.
It's quite nice though because it's showing, because it does mention his age a bit in this, because it is sort of a direct continuation of the previous Fleming,
That's
but
right.
6 years on or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So it's nice that it sort of mentions he sort of surprises himself with his own, carnal desires but keeping himself on his toes and suspicious of everyone. So that was cool. That was really good.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a nice touch as well, because it's like, it's the stuff Bond at home you never see. So it was quite nice to have that, have a brief. So one thing I thought was pretty weird is then he decides that he is going to go to the party, right? He pulls up at the party. There's nobody around. Rings the doorbell. No answer. No sign of anything going on. So he immediately thinks, what's going on? Bit of foul play going on here. I'm going to check this out. There's no cars outside, no sign of life inside. So he kind of sneaks around and then looks through the windows and nothing's going on. So he kind of wonders whether there's any dodginess going on. So he jimmies the lock.
But I like the way how his, what he used to force his way through the lock was in the compartment here in his heel of his shoe.
That's true. Yeah,
that was
a nice
really cool.
Touch.
That was a Goldfinger throwback, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that.
So he jimmies the lock and in he goes, and everything is as it should be. So it's like all the food is set up for the party. And then as he's sort of snooping around upstairs, he hears her arrive and come back, and she's on the phone to somebody saying that her car broke down, blah, 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 blah. So, and she's cancelled the party. We'll do it another time. So now he's in the house alone with her. And he's like, what, do I reveal myself or not? And he's just sort of like hiding in her wardrobe or something. And then she comes in and she's like stripping down to her undies and jumping in the shower and all this kind of stuff. And it's like he has this like proper peeping Tom moment, doesn't he?
He's a right perv, yeah. I mean, it would have been hard not to. I suppose if he didn't go out the window, and you knew that was happening, it would have been, I guess, in Bond's position, hard to have just stayed in the cupboard or waited that well, maybe it wouldn't have been, I don't know. Yeah. But it reminded me a bit of the old Thunderball scene in the hotel where, with Fiona Volpe, where he goes in. He could have gone in while she was having a shower, or even The Man with the Golden Gun, with Andrea Anders when
that's true.
Rog walks in on her. But then Bryce could have had a gun, It was a bit similar, but...
I was going to say, if this had been Roger's Bond, he would have... What he would have probably done is he'd have disrobed and just got into her bed and waited for her. That's what Roger would have done.
Yeah, definitely.
But there we go. So when she's in the shower, he sneaks downstairs and then leaves her a little note because he nicked some of her booze and says like, "Oh, thanks for the cocktail, love, James," and then leaves.
Yeah, I like that bit.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of weird, and I've listened to a couple of podcast reviews of the book since I read it, and a lot of people saying that this whole sequence is totally out of character and just weird. And I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, knowing what a pervert Ian Fleming was, now we've learnt more about him. I feel like this probably is quite a Fleming-esque thing to do, Short of, tying her up, knocking her around and beating her around a bit.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I haven't got any sort of... I like the scene. I mean, if you were in Bond's position and you saw the party but no one there, you would be curious, wouldn't you? You would want to see if anything was happening. So you would go in. And if she happened to come home while you were there, okay, it's a bit, it was a bit of a peeping Tom moment, but... the fact that it was really nice, the fact that he had the whiskey and he left a note underneath the glass, and just to let her know, so it was that cheeky little moment, but there was no harm in it, really.
I think at the same time, it's kind of like, because he was still suspicious, wasn't he? He was like, is she an opposite number agent kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. So it kind of, I think it works. I think it works well. It was an amusing scene. I liked it. I was entertained by it. So that's the main thing. It was good. So then we go back to work, and we see M, and we get that whole kind of scene, which makes me smile because I imagined the proper Bernard Lee M,
So did I.
I missed him so much, and it seemed to work really well. There he is with his pipe and stuff, and it felt right. It really felt right.
Yeah.
Notice old Mathis gets a mention as well.
Yeah,
because he's supposed to pose as a member of the French press, which his identification has been sorted out by René. Now, one thing I do like about this book is how I feel like how the Fleming characters sometimes had outrageous names. I think he really gets it right with this and gets it like a really nice balance for it. Like he's got a new secretary called Araminta Beauchamp, right? Which sounds like something that would come out of Fleming's mouth, doesn't it? Or Minty for short. I thought that was a great touch.
I did. I really liked it. And that's one thing that I think has kind of been missing from the films, actually. In the novels, he has secretary. Obviously, there's Moneypenny, who's there anyway, but he has his own secretary, and he has a housekeeper. And there's certain little things that are in the novels that would be nice, even if it was brief, but just to see something like that in the films. And I really like the sort of character Minty and the name as well. Yeah, it's cool.
If I'm not mistaken, Goodnight was his secretary, wasn't she, in the books?
She was. Yeah, that's right.
I suppose in terms of like a film setting, it would get weird, wouldn't it? Having Moneypenny as the iconic secretary and then having another secretary. Do you really need that?
That's true.
But in terms of the book, I think it works perfectly.
Yeah.
But then, so we've got the classic M scene, Bond's smoking away like a chimney. M's got his pipe out. Which is
apparently healthier.
Absolutely, yeah. And then you get the whole kind of plot thing, which is basically a fictional African nation that was a former British colony. There's been some oil found there, and then the two tribes who kind of own the land are fighting over it, and there's kind of like a civil war going on, and it's in Britain's interests to stop it. And then you've got Brigadier Solomon Adiki, who's kind of like, they call him the African Napoleon, who's kind of on the losing side, so to speak, but he's dragging the war on for ages because he's being so successful. So it's Bond's mission to go in there and assassinate Brigadier Adiki, which I thought was cool. I thought that was a good old-fashioned Bond as a hitman kind of thing. It was good.
Yeah, I like that as well. And well, he was sent in to make sure Adiki wasn't doing as well as he was performing at that time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in other words, obviously take him out. But yeah, because the last time that sort of happened, well, film-wise, it brings back a bit of the Living Daylights, doesn't it? And that sort of thing. And yeah, no, it's cool. I like that.
I must admit, actually, this book did remind me both of Living Daylights, the book, and the film in various points, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit later on. Did I mention I met Koskov the other week?
No? Really?
No.
Did you? Where was that?
So then after that, we meet the new Q, which is pretty cool. And he's now Quentin Dale, who's 25 years old. I guess Boothroyd had retired in the interim since Man with the Golden Gun. And I liked it. I almost pictured Ben Wishel's Q.
Yeah, I definitely did. Well, it's same sort of age, and I mean, I love the fact he's called Quentin with a Q as well, and you know, it seems to be a running theme with MI6, and yeah, but I definitely sort of pictured him because it's the right sort of age, it's the right sort of you know, had the right that sort of feel going with it, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're minimalist sort of gadgets as well. Which
That's
is really
it.
cool.
It's like all you really got this time was a tub of talcum powder that was like poisonous. One scoop will knock you out for 2 or 3 days. 2 scoops will kill you, which feels like a classic Fleming thing. You know, it's great. It's within the realms of reality and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was cool. It was nice to see Q.
Yeah, it's good.
So then we're off to Zanzarim, which is our fictional African country. And I thought it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because Bond is set in that point in time where like the British Empire is kind of not what it was. Obviously, after World War II, it all sort of
dwindled down a bit, didn't
exactly. And it's kind of like, it's sort of nice to see, even though this is obviously a fictional place, it's an ex-British colony, blah, blah, blah. So it gets the time, it fits into that kind of time period quite well, I thought. So again, we've got some cool character names, which again is so hard to do with literary Bond because it could go one way or the other, and you have some really ridiculous names that just sound retarded, or you can get ones that are actually sort of quite classy yet Fleming-esque. And I must say, I think he's got the balance just right in this book throughout the whole thing, really. So he arrives in Africa, and his driver is called Christmas. How do we feel about that?
Well, we've heard of Christmas before, haven't we?
Yeah. Only comes once a year.
It does indeed. But no, I thought he was all right. It was the fact that he must have known that it'd been used before. But I think it's quite a commonplace name within those parts. So yeah, why not? And it almost gives the character a bit of joy, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of like, it was almost nice because it felt like a quarrel. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Yes, it did.
It was
right.
like that kind of vibe. And then the next one we have is his contact, where he was meant to meet Ogilvy Grant, who was his kind of like contact in Zanzibar. And I thought this was a really lovely moment because he assumes Ogilvy Grant is a man, right? Then he shows up and it's indeed a woman. And it's like that moment in Moonraker where he's like, I'm looking for Dr. Goodhead. And she's like, you found her. And he's like, a woman. Like, there's that innate sexistness in him. Which I thought was a lovely touch for that period. And she goes by the name Blessing. And of course he says, a blessing in disguise, which again could so easily have been cheesy, but the way it's presented, I think it worked really well. It's like, it's Bondy enough without being pastiche and getting it right. How did you feel about that?
Yeah. I really liked it. I mean, it made me laugh. It made me smile, definitely. You know, it's got a little bit of cheese to it, as we've seen in various sort of films before, but it didn't overstep the mark for me. That was good. It works, I think. It was. You can tell he's put a lot of thought into the names and the characters, and I think that shows really. It's not just, we'll just put this and, you know, put those 2 words together and there's a name. He's actually, you know, he's come up with some good choices.
That's it. I love the fact that she sort of rebuffs it and she's like, oh, I've never heard that one before, when he says it as well. I thought that was a nice touch. Yeah, so basically you have the whole meeting with her, and she's supposed to get him into Port Dunbar, which is kind of like the centre of all the action, where Solomon Adiki's supposed to be, where, you know, he's obviously supposed to assassinate him. So basically they set off in the car and they're driving through, and then you have, again, Fleming-y moments where he's noticing her legs and he's getting pangs of lust for her as they're travelling down, as obviously, of course, he would do. And then what we have is of course, we have the moment where they're shacked up in a hotel and she comes in, oh, James, there's a lizard in my bedroom. And he's like, well, let me sort that out for you. And then in he goes. And obviously gets rid of the lizard and ends up getting a lot more than just the lizard. And again, felt it was all great. It works really nicely. Now, sorry, go on, go for it.
Yeah, no, go on. I was just going to say, for anyone who heard what you just said there, it could easily think, oh, well, that's just, pure misogynist Bond, and the girl just falling in his arms. But how that's presented in the book is not like that. She is using Bond as much as he's using her.
Yeah.
And it's not just her being weak and succumbing. It's completely equal.
Yeah.
And, I think that's worth saying, because anyone who might, not have read the book might have gone, oh, that's typical, dodgy Bond.
Yeah.
But no, it is done very well.
Well, the way I saw that is that she didn't really give a shit about the lizard. Do you know what I mean? It was like she was just using that as an excuse to get him to come in her room. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, no, it's a good point, actually. Yeah. So then we meet, and this was the thing that I found a little bit confusing, but not, because it worked out well in the end, was when we meet Cobus Breed. Okay. Now, basically,
South Africa.
Yeah, indeed. So they're in bed at night, and then these guys burst in, and that's where we meet Cobus. Now, or Jacobus, if you want to go through his full name. Now, another cool name. I think that works really well. Cobus Breed. It sounds like villainous without being silly.
Yeah.
And there's a great description of him on page 88, which I'm going to read for you now. Now, obviously, when you're a Fleming villain, you've got to have some sort of disfigurement, haven't you? It's part of the course.
And this disfigurement you have previously mentioned in the podcast without even knowing it. And I'll refer to it in a minute after you've read the description.
Interesting. Okay, so where are we? Okay. Close to him, Bond could see that half his face looked different from the other. The glinting that Bond had spotted was caused by tears. His left eye didn't blink, and tears flowed unchecked from it. Tears that he wiped away with a constant motion of his thumb or dried on his cuff. There were 2 small round scars below his left eye, bullet entry wounds that looked like a stamped umlaut, which don't know what the hell that means, and the contours of the left-hand side of his face were strangely dished. The cheekbone was missing. Some awful trauma to his face had left him in this state, obviously. So there it is. You've got the disfigurement. And it's, obviously from a gunshot wound. And immediately, that reminds me a touch of Silver's warped face in Skyfall. I thought that was a lovely touch. I think, is it Devil May Care where the guy's got a monkey hand?
Yes, I think he has. Which sounds a bit strange, really, doesn't it? The monkey hand. I think this is a lot closer to what we're after, to what we're looking for. Definitely. Yeah. It had a bit of that. It had a bit of the Le Chiffre with the eye, which relates back to what I was going to say when you were talking. We were reviewing some, I think Casino Royale, obviously, like it often does, came up in something, and you were talking about Le Chiffre saying, and his eye kept on sort of crying tears, and then like you went, oh no, blood, why would a villain just cry tears? But now we've got one.
We do. There you go. What a prediction. I've predicted the next Bond song is going to use the same chords as the last 3, and there was my last prediction that came true. So there we go, a Bond villain that cries all the time. So there it is. So I think, again, if you're a mercenary in South Africa, chances are you're going to have been shot at some point. So it kind of all tallies up. I felt like the monkey hand in Devil May Care was just a bit like, what's that all about?
There's no sort of story really behind it.
Yeah, it was just a weird little hand, like Jeremy Beadle style. But I thought that was a great entrance. Now at this point, you're like, because I kind of felt there's like a Bond formula, isn't there? Right, where you're like, okay, well, where's the Bond girl? Okay, well, there she is. Okay, where's the villain? Okay, here he comes. Where's the henchman? Okay, there he is, right? But so I was kind of thinking, okay, Cobus Breed, because he's doing the dirty work. Yeah, he's got to be the henchman. He can't be the main villain. And there's things that happen later on which I'm like, I'm not sure who's really behind this, who the main villain is, and who's the henchman, and vice versa, which I think actually works out for the better. But when we get to the climax and we get all the reveals, we'll talk about that. But I thought, okay, this is great. This guy's, he's going to feature quite heavily in the plot with a description like that.
Yeah, no, I thought the same in terms of the actual henchman versus main villain, because normally you're introduced to the main villain and then you see the henchman. But the way that he was described and his character, you thought, okay, this is the henchman. Where's the main villain? Yeah. But it had sort of some nice little sort of twists later on. I think.
Again, it's a balance, isn't it? Because at the same time, it's like that's what you're expecting, but you don't want to be spoon-fed the same old shit every time. Just because that's the formula, do you know what I mean? So it's good because usually you remember like in the old Batman series, the villains would always stand at the back and they'd send their henchmen in to do the dirty work. So it's like the fact that he's stormed into this bedroom in the middle of the night with his dudes is quite hands-on, isn't it, for a Bond villain? It's not like Donald Pleasance sitting on his monorail at the back. Do you know what I mean?
Or his big chair.
But but one thing I thought was really cool, it was like a blink and you miss it line, which I was like, again, this is like the kind of the nuances of Bond that William Boyd's got really well, is the fact that obviously they're both naked in bed when all these dudes storm in, and Blessing's like trying to cover herself up, and Bond stands up and he says Bond made no attempt to conceal his nakedness. And I was thought, damn right.
I think that's really good for several reasons. He's probably got nothing to be ashamed of.
He's probably got a massive cock that he's quite happy to show off, even in African countries.
Yeah, even in African countries. But also, like, if he did sort of try and hide anything, think how weak that would make him look and how vulnerable that would make him look. Yeah. If he tried to cover anything up, I mean, that wouldn't be very Bond anyway, would it?
No.
You just couldn't imagine Bond doing something like that, because that would be a sign of sort of weakness or lack of self-confidence, and almost makes himself look vulnerable. Whereas if he's just standing there, dong out, hands on his hips,
Do you know, it's funny you should say that, because that's how I pictured it when I read it. Literally standing there, like hips thrust out, hands on his hips. Yeah. But isn't it funny how like one sentence like that can totally like get an essence of somebody? And I think that was a great example of it. So like I suppose if I was to choose like a weakness in this book, it would be the next bit for me, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that bad, but I'll explain what I mean. So basically, after they've been sort of captured, they're taken in, thrown in the back of this car, and they're traveling and all the rest of it. And then there's a point where they're being marched through like a forest, and they reach that kind of pathway, like a road across. One of the guys runs across, and then it's all fine. And then the next guy runs across, and all hell breaks loose, and there's bullets flying everywhere. So Bond and Blessing get separated. Blessing sort of panics and runs off, and it's pitch black, and you hear gunshots. You hear her scream, so it's like, okay, Blessing's dead, or as you're supposed to believe. Bond ends up sort of like covering himself over with stuff, and ends up falling asleep and waking up the next morning completely separated from everybody else. So he decides to like trot off and see what he can do. So he's walking on his own for a while, and then kind of basically ends up in a little town, thinks, I'm going to sit here outside this building, and being the only white man in town, I'm going to, of course, word's going to get back to somebody that I'm here, because you don't see that in these parts. And then so basically he just sits and chills out. Cars drive past and they eyeball him, and then eventually another car pulls up, and it's Cobus Breed. Now, minutes before, or the day before rather, he was basically grilling him, saying, "Oh, you're a member of the SAS, aren't you?" Blah blah blah. And Bond's like, "No, I'm a member of the French press." And then, as he gets in the car with Cobus mentions, "Oh, my superiors said that your identity checked out, and when they found out you were French press, it was like, we've got to go and find this guy." Blah blah blah. And I felt like that might have been a bit too easy. Do you know what I mean?
The only way that I try to work that to make it not feel sort of that way was that they almost knew a bit more about him than they let on. And rather than, keep the negative sort of face against him, it was almost, okay, this guy, something's not quite right here. Let's befriend him and see if we can find out a bit more about him. Now, I don't know if that's the intention or not, because it was never fully specified, but that's the way that I sort of thought Cobus was trying to do. But if it wasn't that case, then you're definitely right. It was one of those sort of way too easy moments. And just like, he's walked for 2 days through this forest. I think it was quite nice where he's in the village with the sort of starving kids, and the imagery there was very good, and parched throat and all this. But just to, wait on the side of the road, and suddenly there's Cobus in the car. Even that was a little bit sort of...
It was a bit of a stretch, that one. Still, it's not like a major plot point, so it doesn't really matter. But
that's true.
Again, that made me sort of a little bit, but no big dealie.
They were few and far between though, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Cobus, they head into Port Dunbar, which is like the centre of the action, where the kind of this half of the military are kind of kind of hold up, and kind of that's where their kind of headquarters are. And then this is where I was thinking, okay, so Cobus isn't the main villain, because we get he mentions they drive past some loads of surface-to-air missiles that are parked outside Port Dunbar, and Cobus says, "Oh, that's from our pet millionaire who's funding us, basically." So you're thinking, okay, millionaire, he is our main villain, right? So Cobus is just the odd job of the outfit kind of thing. So he drops Bond off, and there's like a press sort of headquarters where he meets a lot of the other kind of press people from various parts of the world, kind of set up. And then we've got Digby Breadalbane, which again is a first class Fleming name. That sounds like an old Etonian sort of dude, doesn't it? I mean, you could imagine definitely. Digby Breadalbane would be sitting there supping vodka martinis with Fleming in Jamaica, couldn't you?
Definitely. It's a great name, Digby Breadalbane. Yeah. And I like the way that, the way that he mixes in with the other journalists. Again, he's like quite cautious about them. And I love the way that he's just sort of reads each of them, and just from like a moment's glance, he knows exactly about this person and that person, that person. It's got.
There was that part earlier as well, wasn't it, with Geoffrey Letham, who's like the guy who's just quizzing him and asking too many questions. Yeah,
and he disliked him. Yeah, and then obviously when he went out for dinner with Blessing. Was that before or after that bit? Sorry,
that was back when he first meets Blessing. Like that was,
and I thought that was a really nice touch. So he's there. He's having a really nice meal with Blessing in a restaurant, and this guy who he knows, who's like a pain in the ass, comes over and starts talking, and then he sees Blessing, and basically in his eyes he thinks Bond's like bought a prostitute, and he's like just sort of says, right, when you're done with her, I'll have a go, and sort of thing. Completely, is really bad about it all. And then Bond's like, let's just go for a quick word outside. So he's, this other guy thinks he's going to have a nice chat about the journalism or the war or something. And then Bond just like sucker punches him, and then tells the guys inside there's someone that's had too much alcohol, go and shove a bucket of water on him, doesn't he? And then goes back to Blessing. And that was really nice, I think. Yeah. It showed his sort of, it's nothing to do with being macho. It's just, the honour,
the honour of a lady, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So it's quite an interesting thing, because you've had that ruckus, and then he's punched him in the stomach, blah blah blah, and then the same guy shows up when he's in Port Dunbar, so Geoffrey Letham. So it's kind of like, okay, here's going to be his thorn in his side a little bit. Yeah. So there's that. So then we meet his new assistant, Quarrel number 2, who's called Sunday. Which again works for me. That's a nice Fleming character name. And then after we meet Sunday, we get to meet Hulbert Link, who is the pet millionaire. Now, this is where I'm thinking, okay, so here's our main villain. It's got to be Hulbert Link. And again, there's a cool description of him on page 124, which I'm going to read up now, which is where are we now? Yeah, okay, so this kind of gets the mystery flowing, okay? Nobody seemed to know his early history in any detail. Rumours abounded that he had made his first fortune smuggling foodstuffs in the black market during the chaos of post-war Europe, that he was the bastard son of an English aristocrat and an Italian courtesan. He had a Swiss passport that was resident in Monte Carlo. Hass had told him he spoke excellent German and French, but no one really knew for sure where he was from. Georgia, someone had said, or one of the Baltic states perhaps. Haas had even heard rumours about Corsica and Albania. His companies were all based in Liechtenstein, apparently. So it's like, okay, this sounds like a Blofeld. Do you know what I mean? He sounds like number one of kind of Spectre. Bond looked at him closely. Was the white blonde hair dyed? He wondered suddenly. Another ruse. Were the slightly deranged mannerisms, the wide-eyed enthusiasms, the carelessness about what he wore, more examples of a clever and duplicitous mask? Everything about him to Bond's eyes seemed slightly bogus and worked up. He realised that for someone like Hulbert Link, the more speculation about his origins, the more wild guesses thrown about, the better the disguise. So it's kind of like,
I like that.
Yeah, that's a really cool kind of setup. So immediately I'm thinking, he's the villain. There you go. He's the kind of the brains behind it. What did you think about that?
I thought, it was a great. Straight away, I was the same as you in terms of, okay, now we're getting to the sort of meat part of the story. Okay, let's find out a bit about this guy. And normally you hear the reel off of the backstory and all this, and to get that sort of mysterious side to it was really good.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a bit of Christopher Walken's character, like Zorin, where he could speak a dozen languages, no accent or whatever it is. And just to have that mysterious background was really good. And straight away, it got, okay, so this guy's funding this war. There's got to be more to it. Why is he doing it? It doesn't quite tell you why. So it's setting up straight away. Okay, Bond's in Bond's eyes, he's probably the same as us in terms of he's thinking, right, this is the guy. He's got the money. Why is he doing it? And it sets it up well, I think.
Yeah. Now the next part is really cool in the sense that like Bond gets woken in the night to say there'd been a battle, a skirmish that they'd just won, and did Bond want to come and see the kind of the aftermath? And this is a kind of like a really kind of deadly kind of scene, I thought, which worked really well, which is basically Bond shows up on the battlefield and there's all these corpses laid out, and then there's loads of them hanging from the tree with a huge butcher's hook through the chin, and they're just hanging from the tree, which is a really nasty visual, I think. But that's a really cool trademark, like for an evil bastard like Cobus Breed, don't you think?
It was, I mean, that's probably more violent than any sort of potential trademark in the Bond films, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, because that sort of thing, it goes beyond, sometimes you get fantasy violence where something is so outlandish, it's almost not scary or too horrifying. Yeah. But this is purely like,
it's like something almost out of a horror film, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. It's like I Know What You Did Last Summer or something like that. And there's, it's that sort of feeling. So it's definitely had a different style to it, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was really cool. And this was an interesting thing, because obviously I think we'd all immediately think of Baron Samedi, but we get the fetish priest, don't we?
Yeah.
The witch doctor guy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really interesting touch, because basically what it is, Cobus Breed has this witch doctor guy who comes in, and basically he's supposed to bless these guys, and the soldiers then believe that if you get killed on the battlefield, you're immediately resurrected and you kind of live on forever, kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was like a really nice touch. It reminded me obviously of Live and Let Die, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And obviously later on you find that he's just some dude sitting in his house charging money just to put on a show, kind of thing. But it was really interesting to see the control that Breed has over his men. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Using that kind of trick.
Well, that was very, like you said, that's very similar to Mr. Big and the voodoo and that side of things. But it also, the character, it was interesting that the soldiers, having been blessed by this sort of fetish priest, then almost saw themselves as being invulnerable.
Yeah.
They could win everything. And because, when you hear the backstory about the numbers that they have were like far less than the adversaries, now you can see how they're still surviving.
Yeah.
Because they've got this,
this fetish priest.
we can't die sort of attitude.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I thought that was a really, really cool touch. So the next up, the next scene, because the thing so far is that everybody's saying that there's just no way he's going to get, he's basically trying to get close to Adika so he can kill him, basically. And everybody's saying there's no way you're going to get close to him. And then basically there's that cool battle scene, isn't there, where basically they're under attack. The village of Kololo is under attack.
I love this bit. Yeah. This bit was brilliant.
And then Bond basically says that, I had some experience working with commandos in World War II. Basically, do this. Here's a strategy for you. And basically he gets them to kind of shell behind the enemy to draw them into this ditch, which has been kind of mined, basically, with loads of mines. And they're far outnumbered, and Bond's plan works.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it's like an old school battle. It's almost like, Nelson or Napoleon or something like that, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really cool little sequence. And again, shows how cold-hearted he is, because there he is, and there's tens of men being killed in front of him because of his word. And it's like just water off a duck's back, It's crazy.
It was good. And I like the way that when he first sort of suggested something, Cobus Breed like almost brushed it off as if like, what do you know? Yeah. And then obviously when it worked, it was like, okay, now the door's open.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, the stipulation is you get me an audience with the Dika, and that was it. So
well, that's it. He, although all these people were dying, in his eyes, he knew that had to happen to gain access. So, it is sort of cold-hearted, but obviously the mission is priority.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, completely. So, and here's our first little twisty bit in the plot, is when he actually does meet Brigadier Dika, we find that he's kind of in bed, riddled with cancer on his deathbed, basically, or so we're led to believe at this point. And it's kind of like, at that point, it's like, oh, Bond thinks his job is over. He's been sent to kill this dude. The guy's going to be dead in 5 minutes anyway, so I might as well go home, basically. And he gets awarded the Gold Star of Dahum for his performance in the previous battle, which I remember Bond's not allowed to accept medals, is he, being a 00?
I thought, wasn't it in A View to a Kill or Octopussy where Golgo is somehow in the MI6 office and he's presenting like some Russian like medal to Bond?
Oh,
for his
maybe
health.
he is. Yeah.
Maybe I don't think he's meant to accept foreign sort of medals, but
that's interesting.
It triggered something.
So basically, Bond's like, well, my job's over. So what's the one thing I can do to kind of speed this thing along? Which again is interesting, isn't it? Because basically he's just sort of architected the killing of all of those troops on the opposite side who are essentially working in Britain's best interests because they're trying to attack. So he's delayed that. He gets they obviously win the battle, and then so his job now is just to make it as easy as possible for Port Dunbar to be taken and the battle to end. So that's when he goes and kidnaps, the fetish priest Tony Umsur, sticks him in the boot, gives him a bit of Q's poison to knock him out for a few days, and leaves him there. So it's interesting, isn't it, how he's like playing the game in the sense that you've got these two sides. One's essentially on the side of Britain, and then you've got the kind of the other guys, and then he's orchestrated his own troops to lose the battle, essentially the British kind of troops to lose the battle. Goes ahead, finds Adik is going to die anyway, gets rid of the fetish priest to weaken this side of the battle. So it's kind of weird, isn't it? It's like sort of playing games within a game in a sense.
Yeah, it should. I mean, it just shows how clever he is. You've seen this sort of strategic sort of experience in the battle, and then he's got the sort of mind factor, I guess. The to play one side off the other. In fact, he does that a couple of times in the films. There's a bit of Thunderball where he plays sides off one another, and I thought it was good. And the fact that he locked this guy in a boot and just like left him in like a random field somewhere, that's something that you don't sort of picture Bond doing. But I think it was quite a cool little thing, because obviously this place is quite deserted, and it gets super hot, so that he's going to be he's not going to be comfortable in there.
Yeah, because he took the time, didn't he, to put some canisters of water in there for him and all that kind of stuff. And he said basically he hoped he'd be out of action for like 2 or 3 days before he'd send somebody to find him. So I that struck me as a slightly odd thing to do. I would have thought Bond would have just killed him. Do you know what I mean? But maybe not. But so then at that point, Bond's ready to go home, books himself on the flight. Then at the last minute, he gets dragged off the plane. Now, this is where the plot thickens. Basically, the old fella that Bond beat up earlier, Geoffrey Letham, the reporter who asked too many questions, has dobbed him in to Cobus Breed, saying that he'd done some investigating and none of his press buddies had ever heard of a James Bond. So Cobus comes, pulls him off the plane, takes him into some little shacky room on the airport, and basically shoots him, narrowly missing his groin. And then who shows up but Blessing? She comes in. She's like, right, we've got to get out of here. She shoots Bond in the chest, leaves him lying alone.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Now, again, this is a point where it's like, we're stretching things a little bit here in the sense that they both go, leaving Bond for dead because they just shot him twice. Shot in the leg, shot in the chest. And then the next chapter, Bond wakes up in hospital in Edinburgh, in a military hospital, and M's there, and it's kind of like, Digby Breadalbane was late to the airport, and he found you and patched you up, and some of our boys were working there. It was just a bit too convenient. Too many things fell into place there, I feel. I think you needed to see more somehow, or at least to build up to that scene. It's fine having a time gap, so long as this, the previous thing is all tied up neatly for that bit to happen, and it just didn't have enough information, I think, to make you sort of think, oh, okay, that it was just suspending. It was a touch on the convenience side, wasn't it? Really, I think, it was a funny one, that. But hey ho, so he wakes up in hospital in Edinburgh, discharges himself, gets the train down to London. And this is one of my favourite sequences in the book, actually, because the whole idea is that he comes back to London and he doesn't want anyone to know he's there. So he's kind of made some phone calls ahead to say, I'm going on holiday for 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. Gets the train down to London. Weirdly, he books himself into a little hotel next to King's Cross under the name Jacobus Breed.
Yeah, that bit I didn't quite get.
So I'm like, is that just him being a bit sort of, I don't know, like, is that meant to be like a sort of flippant joke or something? I don't know. It just seemed to be unnecessary. I don't know.
I didn't understand that bit either.
Yeah. No. And then there's that bit where he sneaks into his own house. He goes around the back.
That was cool.
Climbs through the window. I love all that shit. And basically picks up his fourth radiator, and he's got his little hidden stash of stuff. He's got his gun, some ammo, cash, and all that kind of stuff, and keys to his little bedsit safe house. And basically, as he's doing that, he walks into the living room and finds his new maid Donalda, who's taken over from May, unconscious on the floor, wound to the back of the head. Now, this isn't really explained, is it? Really, we never find out who did that.
No, I think the assumption is that it was someone obviously either working for Breed or some sort of thing. But then if it was Breed, surely he would have killed her properly, because he's not the man. I don't know.
Yeah, and at the same time, he would think Bond is lying dead in an airport in Port Dunbar, wouldn't he? Like, so what would be the point of it? I don't really understand what the motivation was behind that. But
no.
Yeah. But there we go. So then basically he gets led to Washington, D.C. from basically one point we didn't mention earlier is the Africa Kin charity, which is basically the Solomon Adika's brother runs, and there's this whole kind of thing where, shipping sort of relief out to Africa and all that kind of stuff. And as he goes there, he finds that the place is closed down and that Gabriel Adika's moved to Washington, D.C., so that's his only lead. So this is the point where he goes solo. Da-nan. Obviously the name of the book, it all starts to make sense. Lovely stuff. And then and this was a cool moment where he basically hooks up with Bryce Fitzjohn again and nicks a passport. Don't know if you remember my trivia question from earlier on, do you?
I do indeed.
There we go. So that's where it happens. Nicks the passport, goes to his forger mate and says, stick my photograph in there, change the sex to male and change it from actress to actor and all that kind of stuff. And I like that. I like the fact that Bond has got like an old school forger mate that he knows that he just kind of keeps in his his phone number in his little stash. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was really nice. What did you think? Yeah,
I think so, because, he couldn't go back to MI6 to have it done for obvious reasons. And I think someone working in that business, you would have your little contacts who could get you this, that, and the other when you needed it. Yeah. And it was nice. It was cool. And I think it brought it sort of, I don't know, it set it up well in terms of, he needed to get one or two things and then that was it. And then he could go. So, yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah, I love that sequence. It was like old school Bond, It was really cool. So we get to sort of get on for the climax of the whole story now when he ends up in Washington, D.C., which again I thought is a great location.
It's great. What did you think about the whole idea that, suddenly he's woken up, he's gone down to London, and it's like, oh, Africa Kin's now in Washington. Was that okay? I mean, I suppose it's a way of getting him over there.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a funny one, that, isn't it? Because you could say that was a bit like, well, we need a new location, so let's just set this bit in Washington. Yeah.
But it does relate to the story as well.
But it does, absolutely. Yeah. I can understand why you might think that, why one might think that. But at the same time, when we find out what the actual plot is, it does make perfect sense, I guess. Yeah. So we basically, we land in Washington, D.C., and there's that cool bit where basically he finds the new headquarters for Africa Kin and stakes it out. He basically gives a month's rent for this empty office across the street, and he gets set up in there.
He puts on a little disguise, doesn't he?
Yeah. He basically goes to the gun shop, doesn't he? He gets all kitted out. He gets his sniper rifle and some ammo and all that kind of stuff. And he's been scoping the place out for days, which reminds me of the Living Daylights short story. Yeah. That opening part, which is fucking brilliant. And then obviously he puts his disguise on and goes in there to try and meet Gabriel Adika. And then there was that cool sequence where he's sitting there for ages and ages and ages, and he's kind of thinking what's going up. And then Cobus Breed walks in the door all suited and booted. And then he immediately jumps up and goes out the back door, throws his disguise in the bin and stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought this sequence is it's like classic old school spycraft. Do you know what I mean? He does some cool shit around now. Like there's that moment where he's sitting there in the waiting room to see Adika. Cobus Breed walks in and he immediately turns, walks away calmly, goes down the back stairs. He disguises off immediately and he's away.
Yeah. And he's already scoped out his escape as well, hasn't he? Because he was waiting there. As soon as he triggered something wasn't right, he went to go to the men's room, and then he found that escape route with the stairs. So he knew straight away, okay, if anything happens, I can get out here. Yeah. So it's good.
Absolutely. And then so you've got that whole sort of sequence where he sees Blessing in DC, and she goes into that restaurant, and then he kind of tails her, walks into the restaurant to book book a table, walks out to make sure she's seen him. He's watching her from across the street. She comes steaming out, and then he tells her again. And I thought that was very clever. Yeah, that was so classy, like spycraft stuff. I love that sequence. Yeah. And I love the way he's appraising her as well. Like he's tailing her, and she goes to where she's living, immediately comes out like 20 minutes later, with all her bags, checks into a hotel across town, and he's like remarking to himself, she's a clever girl, she knows what she's doing, she's like she's been compromised, so she's immediately changing her base and all that kind of stuff, which is, I love that sequence. What did you think of the mugging scene?
I thought it was pretty cool. It was a bit strange for me. It's like, again, Bond's in a situation that we've not seen him before. He's got 3, what were they, late teens kids trying to mug him, and as he's never been in that situation before, and you sort of think, he'd never, they're only kids, he'd never sort of do anything too bad, but he gives him a bit of a pasting, and obviously he gets a knife, which he sort of gets to use later on. So it was a bit strange, and it was almost like it pushed the boundary a little bit, I thought.
Yeah, it's funny because a couple of the kids run off, and there's one there, it's got a broken wrist or whatever. And it's one of, I mean, that's ultimate fantasy, isn't it? Like, that's like justice served, isn't it? It's like, if you get mugged, you would like to think you would turn around and beat the shit out of everyone and walk off and just, straighten your cuff and sort your hair out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it was a cool scene, but it was kind of like, I don't know whether it's just sort of a bit of unnecessary action, I guess, because it's like he gets the switchblade, which is what he uses later. But did you couldn't he have just bought the knife at the gun shop? Do you know what I mean?
That's true. And it is good that he sort of senses he's ready for the fight, but you never think he's under a threat, do you? Really?
No, absolutely. But then so kind of next up is a nice little touch. He's back in the office scoping things out, and then he gets the old gun to the back of the head kind of thing, and it turns out it's Felix Leiter's nephew. Yeah. Brigham Leiter.
Brigham. What do you think of the name Brigham?
It's all right.
That's quite cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got Brigham Leiter, and you've got Luke Massenet, who's like his partner.
And he was a bit shady, wasn't he?
He was a bit shady. Bond didn't like him straight away. He felt there was something a bit off about Massenet.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, it's funny that it's you would have expected Felix to do this, wouldn't you? Usually, so it's unusual that you brought in the nephew, but cool. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So then you find out that basically the CIA has been investigating Africa Kin, and there's a whole investigation Bond stumbled into. He was about to ruin everything, which is I mean, that's a bit Live and Let Die, isn't it? Do you remember? There's that kind of scene where Leiter's listening into Kananga and all that kind of stuff. But then we find out that Blessing is also a CIA agent, and she purposefully shot him in the chest at a point that wouldn't have been fatal, which you'd
want to make sure she was a good shot.
You certainly would, yeah, completely. So there's all that going on. So there's a bigger thing that Bond has stumbled into now, and obviously don't forget he's gone solo. MI6 don't know he's here, so it's it's all on the quiet. Now the next bit, which I thought was really cool, because when you see a scene with those hooks under people's chins, you know that's going to show up again. And then obviously Bond goes to visit Alicia, but let's keep calling her Blessing, otherwise it's going to get way too complicated. Goes to see Blessing, and they have a little bone in the hotel room, and they catch up, and she fills them all in and all that kind of stuff. Or he fills her in, more like. Sorry for our younger listeners, that was totally inappropriate. And then as he leaves, there's a moment which I didn't really pick up on when I first read it, and then I remembered it after the next bit, which is on page 261, which I thought was a really nice touch. Where are we now? Page 261. So he's just left a hotel room. As he crossed from the annex to the main block of the motel, Bond paused, some sixth sense making him draw into the shadows of a doorway. He waited, looking about him. The parking lot was almost full, its corralled cars shining dewily in the glow of the arc lights, like some sort of sleeping mechanical herd in its vast paddock. Nobody moving, nobody to be seen. He waited a couple of minutes, but there was nothing to worry him. He strode into the rear of the motel with a wave to the night porter and rode the elevator up to his room. So, the next part we find when he goes back to see Blessing, that she's been killed. She's been mullered. Now, obviously, as he's leaving her room the night before, that's when they find out that Blessing is a double agent, and that's where he's been watched. And I thought that was a really nice touch, because it's not really hit upon again that moment happened.
No, that's true.
So you sort of do wonder who was what. Like, you know who was watching him, but where they were. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was a really cool section. And
the fact that he had this sort of sixth sense as well, that something had happened.
Yeah.
Where did anything trigger that at all, or something must have done?
Yeah.
You wonder what.
Just the hairs on the back of his neck, I guess.
Yeah.
But then, so basically, before Blessing dies, he scopes out. He finds Roanoke Hall, which is like where the climax happens, and he rather like in the Goldfinger with scoping out Goldfinger's factory. He's kind of like creeping around, binoculars out, scoping it out, and I love all that stuff. I love when Bond is having a sneak and a wrecking. It's really cool. So that kind of sets up the climax. You know, shit's going to go down in that house. Goes back to the hotel, and then like the Blessing death scene is really, really fucking gruesome. And I would like to read you another excerpt if I make this. Page 270.
I think you could do that the whole book, You do a
Shall I just start
book.
reading it from start to finish?
I think, yeah.
Reading Bond with Tom and Chris. Okay, so here we go. He knocked on her door. There was no answer. He knocked again and said, "Blessing, it's James." Still no answer. He repeated himself more loudly. Nothing. Immediately you're thinking, uh-oh. It doesn't say that in the book. That was just my comment. He went back to the night porter at the rear entrance and called her room. The telephone rang and rang with no reply. Odd. The night porter had just come on duty and couldn't enlighten him. Maybe Blessing had come in and had to leave in a hurry, forgetting to switch the lights out. Bond went through the main lobby and sought out Delmont. "Hey, Mr. Fitzjohn, what can I do for you?" Bond drew him discreetly aside and lowered his voice. "Delmont, would you do me a favour? Has my wife come back? You know, the lady in Suite 5K in the annex? Give me 2 seconds." Delmont scurried off to reception and swiftly returned. "She's in her room, Mr. F," he said. "Arrived about an hour and a half ago. She hasn't left, or her key would be there." "Of course. Thanks, Delmont." Bond smiled reassuringly, but he was worried. So we know something's going on, right? Skipping forward. He walked casually back to the rear entrance and up the stairs to the second floor suites. He glanced around, but the corridor was empty. He unscrewed the heel from his loafer. There we go again.
I like that.
And worked the blade in between the lock and the door frame. He lunged at it with his shoulder and it gave. Bond pushed the door open. The lights were on. Blessing's handbag was tossed on the sofa. Thus, so far, unremarkable. Had she taken a sleeping pill and was fast asleep in her bedroom? "Blessing, it's me," Bond said, then repeated himself louder. Silence. Maybe his initial assumption was right. She'd rushed out, called away urgently. But why leave her handbag? Bond felt a premonitory nausea. There you go, he's feeling a bit sick. We know something's up. Something was making him reluctant to go to the bedroom. He took a few steps, then halted. A thin, dark, sticky crescent of blood had seeped under the door to the bedroom. Bond reached for the handle, turned it, and tried to push the door open. It was unusually heavy. Bond gave an unconscious, spontaneous moan because he knew what had happened to Blessing, and he knew who had done it. He stood there in an awful balance of inertia, unable to decide whether to turn away and leave or to confront his darkest suspicions. He felt sick at heart. He knew what he had to do. He leaned his weight against the door and shoved and pushed it open. One glance was enough. Blessing was dead, naked, hanging by her jawbone from the hook on the back of the door, blood still dripping from her opened throat. Bond heaved the door to and sank to his knees. Cobus breed.
That's a great passage, isn't it?
It's really, really dark. And the thing that gets me going is like, when Bond's out for somebody and he's going to kick some ass, and I get all excited about it. This next paragraph made me go, "Ooh, fucking hell." Bond felt the tears smart in his eyes as he hung his head and thought desperately about Blessing and what she must have endured. A conflagration of outrage making him tremble, igniting his seething anger. Then he stood up, his head clearing. He inhaled deeply. The shock was draining from him to be replaced by a new granite-hard resolve. There was nothing so invigorating as clear and absolute purpose. There was only one objective now. James Bond would kill Cobus Breed. Ooh.
That is awesome.
Come on, son, let's get involved. Let's get it happening. I like it.
It does make you want to I don't know. It picks you up, doesn't it? Definitely.
Do you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the whole he disagreed with something that ate him sequence in Live and Let Die,
Yeah.
Where Light is all messed up and wrapped up in bandages and Bond kind of discovers him and stuff,
Or License to Kill in the films.
Or License to Kill in the film,
yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that's a really gruesome sequence in it, but cool nonetheless. It's got Bond's steely hardness, and he's gonna kick some ass, which I thought was really great.
Yeah, he's got to do something.
Which brings us on to chapter 10, which the title of the chapter gets me excited. Chapter 10, One Man Commando. Yes, I love a bit of one man commando action. I love it.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
So this bit again, it's like the classic spycraft stuff. So that scene in DC where he's like scoping out Blessing and tailing her and all that kind of stuff. This is like textbook Bond sneaking around and infiltrating, which we both love.
Yeah.
So he sneaks into the grounds of Roanoke Hall. I imagine he's got his overalls on. He's got his black and
it's got to be. Yeah.
He's got his black overalls on. He's got his utility belt with all his bits and pieces. And there's that whole sequence where he's just playing all the guards off against each other, isn't there? Which I thought was brilliant, like luring them out. They've got their torches. One of them gets tied up and all the rest of it, and talking over them on the walkie-talkies to lead them astray and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And he shoots one while he's still on the walkie-talkie, so he can bring the other one out, and then takes him out. Yeah,
exactly. It was brilliant. It was like a chess game almost.
Yeah.
The way he kind of does it, and then we have the scene where he kills Cobus Breed, and I'm going to do another reading because I think this is really fucking brutal, and I loved it. So page 284, if you're following along at home. So basically, what's happened is Bond's crawled up on the roof. The front door of Roanoke Hall is open, and he's kind of using the walkie-talkie to lure out Cobus Breed from inside. So Bond's above, and he's seen this big kind of stone ball thing that was a part of a statue on the roof. So basically, Cobus comes out the door. Bond dropped the stone ball and took a step back. He heard the impact, the sound of meaty crunching, bone and flesh compacting, and Breed's bellow of acute, hideous agony and surprise. He peered down. Breed was on the ground, writhing and moaning, his right arm flapping uncontrollably like some broken wing on a bird. The ball had missed his head, but seemed to have landed squarely on his right shoulder, shattering bone and pulverizing it. Bond slid down the drain pipe and back on the ground, cautiously approached round the side of the building, slipping his Beretta from his pocket. He should just kill him, he thought, but he wanted Breed to know why he was dying, why his pain and imminent execution were recompense for what he'd done to Blessing. There'd be no point in just blowing him away. Bond wanted to taste sweet revenge. Nice.
I like it.
Bond levelled his gun as he drew near. Breed was face down, the stone ball beside his head, and was clearly in massive, intolerable pain and shock. His whole body was now jerking and twitching spasmodically. The stone ball's impact looked like it had shattered the shoulder blade and the collarbone. The downforce of the dead weight had also blasted the humerus into pieces. 3 inches of thick, sheared bone stuck through Breed's shirt at the elbow. Bond turned Breed over with his foot. Breed screamed as his shattered arm dug into the turf of the lawn, but in the good hand that had been underneath his body, he had clung on to his automatic pistol. He fired at Bond and missed. His hand was shaking visibly, and fired again, this time the bullet striking Bond's gun, spinning it off and away in a shower of sparks. Bond threw himself down knees first onto Breed's chest and felt ribs crack and his sternum bend. He sidekicked Breed's gun from his hand and rummaged in his jacket pocket for the switchblade. No switchblade, but the small aerosol can of Savage Heat pepper spray. Bond sprayed Breed's unclosable open eye with a thick mist of oleoresin capsicum and heard his scream rip up from deep in his lungs. Bond's right arm was useless, so Bond stood on his left and let him writhe in the full torment of his pain, his legs kicking convulsively, the potent reduction of chili peppers working on his seething eyeball. Breed wailed like a baby, and Bond happily enveloped his head in another mist cloud of savage heat. "This is for blessing, you filth, you scum," he said, harshly bending over him, "and this is from me," and sprayed his open eye again from a range of 1 inch. That's got to be some painful shit, isn't it?
1 inch, yeah.
Bond reached into his other pocket for the switchblade. He shot the blade out and tugged Breed brutally over onto his front again, burying the knife deep in the back of his neck, severing the spinal cord. Breed's body jerked and then went slack, his screams dying to a burble of popping saliva in his throat. Bond stepped back, breathing heavily, a little astonished at his own savagery.
Wow. That is intense.
It's pretty dark, isn't it, man?
It is. I mean, it is so dark, but you don't mind though, just because you know what this guy has done before.
Yeah.
He's like been a nasty piece of work. You know, he's killed all these people by hooks in their throats, and if it had just been a shot, or if it had just been some sort of non-eventful death, he would have gotten away too lightly.
Yeah.
It had to be hard. It had to be like brutal, and Bond delivers.
Yeah,
I thought.
yeah. I thought that was a great climactic death scene. So still at this point,
And brilliantly read by yourself as well.
Thank you very much.
Right.
I'm available for recordings for audiobooks and narration. So at this point, so Cobus is dead. So we're like, okay, so do we now have that bit where we think it's over and then somebody comes out with a gun behind him and we have the whole fight at the end, like, the Goldfinger thing and, all that kind of stuff. Now, this is what I think Boyd's done well, is the fact that he's kind of he's taken these kind of cliche things and these formulaic things and he's used them, but not in a way that's cliche in themselves.
Yeah.
So after that, he basically goes in the house and he finds Solomon Adika all heroined up, looking nasty and just wearing a pair of filthy underpants, which I thought made me laugh when I read that line. And then there's the whole thing of like, okay, Solomon Adika never actually died in Africa. He's here in America. They've passed him off as his brother, who's also been killed, which it kind of happens later when he talks to Felix and they fill each other in. It was one of those like, okay, here's where we tie up all the loose end kind of chats. But as he sees Solomon, basically out from behind the door steps Hulbert Link, the pet millionaire, with a gun trained on Bond. And you think, okay, here's that scene. Now, I'm fully expecting there to be a struggle or, something of that description.
Nature.
But he actually puts the gun down and says, Cobus has kept us here prisoner, kind of, I'm on your side kind of thing. At that moment, he gets shot in the head by old Luke Massenet, old Brigham Lighter's buddy, and all the CIA kind of arrive all of a sudden and kind of clear it all up. So that's the end. And we're like, why did you shoot Hulbert?
And Bond wasn't sure about Masonette earlier on, was he?
No, absolutely not. And it turns out that Massenet is he's not even CIA. He's like some other kind of, or they almost reference like he's an American 00 kind of, he who should not be named kind of agent that's kind of working for a different entity somewhere.
Yeah.
So then you have this scene with Felix where they're kind of talking back and forwards. And I must admit, I sort of zoned out a little bit where they're all tying up all these loose ends of, Solomon and Adika, Solomon and Gabriel are the different
switch places and all this,
all that kind of stuff. And it was just like,
when they do that, it's tricky because it's almost like if you have to explain everything in dialogue, you've not quite got across everything that you needed to.
Yeah.
And I know you need you need twists obviously throughout the film that you figure out at the end, and you do need a little bit of explaining, like Bond and Goldfinger talk about the bomb, there's one for instance, but it did feel a little bit too much information was put at that particular point.
I kind of felt the same about that really, but that kind of sort of ties everything up, and I just like, even though there was a few, I mean, I don't think there's such a thing as having a perfect book. And there's like the few minor niggles that I've had throughout are totally minor. They don't matter. Do you know what I mean? There was like two things, like, oh, it was a bit convenient that he was rescued at the airport in Africa when he was left for dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not something that really pisses me off. It's just like, oh, you know, but I'll let you get away with it. On the whole, I think William Boyd did a brilliant job. And I think this is probably my favourite of all the continuation novels. How do you feel about that?
Aside from Higson.
Aside from Higson, yeah. I'm putting young Bond in a different category. As an adult Bond,
as an adult Bond,
this is my favourite one of all. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's like when we spoke to Raymond Benson, it's like he wasn't trying to do Ian Fleming's Bond. You know, he said the whole idea behind that was almost an accompaniment to the films. You'd go and see one of Brosnan's films, you'd read the book, one of the books, and you'd expect it to kind of tally up with that, which is what he did. He wasn't trying to do this, you know. No. Same with Gardner. It was all like update it for the 80s. Gardner's Bond was not Fleming's Bond at all, you know. And that was that. So really, Sebastian Faulks and William Boyd
Jeffrey Deaver
are the only two that really tried to do Fleming's Bond, I think, in the sense that, Deaver again felt like it was his own imagining, really. I suppose you could say Kingsley Amis with Colonel Sun was Fleming's Bond. We need to reread that one, actually. I haven't read that since I was really young. So I just feel like out of all those continuation books, this is one that gets it. This is one that gets what Fleming's Bond is, without going to lengths of being a bit cheesy. Like Deaver kind of leaned a bit on the cheese for me. You know, Faulks was a bit too formulaic, where it felt like a bit of a rip-off. This one, right on the nose. I think this was a great effort.
For me, it definitely is better than the previous two, without a shadow of a doubt. I think there are certain bits where, it was nice to see Bond. You saw so many different sides of Bond. You saw like his military background and his intelligence that way. You saw him doing, like we mentioned before, the sort of spying on people, the using his wit, sort of assessing situations. You know, you got the hall at the end of the book that he's sort of scoping out, checking out the guards. You got the bit where he's watching Blessing and seeing her, and he does that a lot. And it's, you know, it's something that when it happens in the films, I'm always like, fuck yes, this is good. And to have it in the book, I think works really well. The only thing for me, which I wasn't 100% sure about is, Cobra's Breed I thought was great. And it's still that idea of, well, who was the main villain? Yeah. Because although he was kind of like the main dude in a way, he's still almost henchman-like for me. Yeah. And this Hulbert Link guy obviously wasn't the bad guy. And then the Adaka brothers were, you know, not really any threat at all. Yeah. So it didn't quite have that overall arch villain, and perhaps it didn't need it. Perhaps it was a story that didn't need it. But that for me, that was the one thing that I wasn't quite in that big chat with Felix at the end. It basically it sort of ties it up in the sense that they say that Hulbert was the main villain, but because Cobus had been killed and he knew he was done for, he sort of did a bit like Koskov does in the Living Daylights and pretended that he was, you know, because he changed his hair and all sorts. And so that's again, that was one of those things that big chat at the end was a bit too like, oh, let's tie up all these loose ends quickly. And you kind of miss that, you know? So even now, I suppose I'm not 100% clear on who the main villain really was. No. But I think that's ultimately, I think it was Hulbert Link was supposed to be the kind of the brains behind it. And ultimately, it was a plot about using the charity to smuggle drugs into America. Yeah, like it was heroin smuggling with the children, wasn't it? Because it was the children that were being ferried over and stuff. So, and it had lots of nice links to sort of. Again, I know we mentioned the films a lot, but that's what we're kind of used to, and it does have some nice little links. Overall, I think it's definitely the best continuation book that I think that I've read, obviously without the Higsons as well. I have to admit, I haven't read all the Gardners or Bensons, but definitely of the last few, I found this one the best to read. Now, if they said Boyd was going to come back and do more, he was going to do a trilogy or something like that, or a series of 5 like Higson does, I would be over the moon. I would love it if he did more, because he's definitely got it. Now, what I really loved, like, as I'm reading this book and certain things happen, and you know when you find yourself when you're reading sometimes and you're like, hee, and you actually laugh out loud or you get excited.
I found that a lot in this book. None more so than at the very end of the book, right? Because basically after all this is settled down, he goes back to England. He goes and hooks up with Bryce Fitzjohn again, and they're kind of you know, they're having a bit of a love affair kind of thing. Now, one thing again after that scene I read out where he kills Cobus, basically his body goes missing. Cobus's body goes missing. They don't find it, so they're like, "Well, what happened to it?" So it's a bit of a mystery hanging on the air. It's like, "Oh, is Cobus going to come back?" And again, that's the kind of the formula, isn't it? Usually a villain comes back at the very end. So here he is in bed with some bird, and away we go. So I'm just going to read. This is a couple of pages, so do bear with me. But it's basically the last sort of 3 pages of the book, how the book actually ends. And I think what he's done here is genius, and I love it. And I'll explain why in a second. So he's just finished copulating with Bryce.
Bryce Fitzjohn. Yeah.
And bearing in mind, Cobus is gone missing. We don't know where he is. Bond woke. He heard a noise. He heard it again, a sharp patter of fine gravel thrown against the window pane, almost like a rain shower. He looked at his watch, 4:55 a.m. Bryce was soundly asleep. Bond slipped out of bed and parted the curtains an inch and peered out. The opaque grey expanse of the lawn, lit by the moonlight, was revealed below, and beyond it, through a fringe of trees, flowed the silver river at high tide. Then he thought he saw some shadow move in the darkness, and felt himself tense suddenly. He gathered up his clothes and shoes and quietly left the bedroom, dressing quickly on the landing. He pulled on his socks and shoes and then his jacket, shoving his tie into a pocket. There was somebody out there in the garden, he was sure, and he was going to find out who it was. He went... Excuse me. He went downstairs, not switching on any lights. It was an old burglar's trick, he was aware. Throw some gravel at the bedroom windows, and if no lights go on, you're pretty much safe to plunder the ground floor. He picked up the poker from beside the fire in the drawing room and crept through to the kitchen and its door onto the garden. Keeping out of sight, he peered through the kitchen windows at the ghostly expanse of the garden within its high walls. Once again, he thought he saw something shift in the big herbaceous border by the fig tree. Were his eyes playing tricks with him? But the thrown gravel was no illusion. Perhaps he should just switch the lights on and the interloper would get the message and try to rob another big house in Richmond instead. But Bond had a strange sense about this wake-up call. Thrown gravel, thrown coins. Perhaps somebody wanted to lure him out into the darkness. Well, he was ready for that. He opened the door and stepped outside. It was cold and his breath condensed, the first intimations of the winter that was approaching. He gripped the poker hard in his fist and walked down a brick path towards the wall and the gate onto the river promenade. He stopped, listening hard. Nothing. A breeze swirled by and leaves rustled. Bond headed for the herbaceous border where he thought he'd seen the movement in the shadows. He stood at the lawn's edge, looking at the plants in the border for any sign of broken stems or leaves. He reached into his pocket for his lighter and clicked it on, crouching and holding the flame close to the ground. Some leaves had fallen. One plant was oddly bent over. He moved the flame so it cast an oblique light, and he saw the footprints. The soil was moist, and the freshly moulded imprints were an inch deep, 4 of them. Someone had been in his garden hiding. What was odd, that one footprint, the right, seemed unnaturally turned into the other, and the right heel seemed implanted deeper than the left, and there was a series of round holes beside them also, as if a stick or cane had been used to rest on. This is madness, Bond thought, but another more rational part of his brain was saying this could be someone deformed, someone who cannot walk unaided, a cripple of some kind. Then he heard a noise in the street beyond and ran to the garden gate, turning the key that was in the lock and flinging the door open. He stepped out onto the street. The tide was now fully ebbing in the river, flowing strongly back towards the sea. Bond looked left and right. The river road here in Richmond was well illuminated by streetlights, but there was no sign of anyone. He thought he heard a car engine kick into life a street away and pulled off into the night. He felt a great sinking of heart as he realised what he had to do. There was no other option. Bond went back into the house and poured himself an inch of brandy in a tumbler, took a gulp, and then went into Bryce's study, sat down at her desk and wrote a brief note on a sheet of her writing paper. Darling Bryce, I have to go away suddenly on business. You are too good for me and I could never make you happy. These few wonderful hours I've shared with you have given my life real meaning. I thank you from the depths of my heart and soul. Goodbye, with my love, Jay. He finished his drink and weighted down the sheet of paper on his desk with his empty glass. She'd find it in the morning when she came down to look for him calling his name. It was Sunday. They had made plans for Sunday. Bond closed the door softly behind him and slipped into the front seat of the Interceptor. He sat there for a while, running through his various decisions, his mind constantly returning to the horrific images of Blessing dead at the hands of Cobus Breed. Perhaps what had happened in the garden had been nothing more than a Richmond burglar trying his luck, but Bond knew he couldn't live with the possibility of Bryce becoming a victim like Blessing because of her association with him. He couldn't put her in harm's way, particularly if the harm was to be administered by a man like Breed. He started the engine. Its throaty purr was so quiet he doubted Bryce would wake, and drove slowly out of her driveway, the gravel crunching under his wide tyres. Now, like that's just like that's wicked, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, again, you've got that kind of cliche thing. There could have been a fight in the garden or something, but there wasn't. It was like a bigger thing. It was like a reminder of who Bond has to be. He's got to he can't settle down with a woman. He's getting older. He's found a new bird he's interested in. They could have had a good life together, but he can't because there's always that threat. And I just thought, what a rad way to end the book. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was good. What happened though if it had been Breed, and then after he left, Breed broke into the house and killed her anyway?
That's a good point. Yeah, that's one he didn't really think about. But
he could have hung around then.
We'll give him some artistic license there.
Yeah,
but do you know what I mean?
It was good. It was good.
Just a great way to sort of tie it up. It's like at the end of the old Incredible Hulk TV series where like Bruce Banner would make some friends and then he realizes he has to walk on, and then at the end of the episode he'd always just be walking on to the next town all on his own in the distance, forever alone. And I just thought it was a really classy way to end the book. You know.
Yeah, it was good, and obviously it goes against perception of what you thought was going to happen, which was great as well. I think. Yeah,
I love that. I really liked it.
I'd be more than happy for Boyd to do another one, definitely.
Yeah, I feel like that scene, like that. I think most people would say that's probably setting it up for a sequel where Cobus comes back and all that kind of stuff. I don't think we'll see another book from him.
No.
I don't think it was meant to be that. Like, I think it's just like a great full stop.
That is Bond's character, isn't it?
That's just what's got to happen, you know, which is great. And it's like that note. It's like at the end of Casino Royale when Vesper leaves him a note where she drowns herself in the bath. It's almost like a mirror of that, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
Which I loved it. I really, really loved this book, man. I'd love him to do more, but I doubt he will.
No. Well, at least he knows that he's done a good job. So
yeah, there we go. William, we salute you. So that's the end of our review of Solo. So let's have some trivia answers.
Trivia answers, okay. You were first, weren't you? So go for it.
Okay, I'm going to go for it. So my trivia question of the day is, in the later part of Solo, Bond travels under the name Bryce Fitzjohn, and we get this line. He had used the name Bryce as a pseudonym before in the early 1950s as an alias for a long train journey he'd made from New York to St. Petersburg, Florida. He'd been John Bryce then, and it had worked very well. What story does he travel as John Bryce?
I'm not sure. If I have to guess, well, no, it's not going to be right. But I'll guess. Is it a Fleming title?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go with to Florida. Now that's given me two things.
It has given you two
I
things.
think was he in Florida in Live and Let Die, perhaps?
Yes.
That kind of mirrors the book quite a lot, doesn't it? I think, am I allowed to say Live and Let Die?
You are. It's absolutely correct. Well done. There you go.
That was lucky.
That's where he gets Solitaire on the train, and they try and he smuggles her out of New York, and all Mr. Big's men are looking for her.
That's right. Yeah, that was good.
It was a nice little nod to that. I like that.
Yeah, it was, and it's very sort of similar, wasn't it? And the sort of setup and everything. Okay, so my trivia was: in which of the Bond films do we see an African location, basically?
Okay, so Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah, and where do you remember where he is in that one?
That would be South Africa, wouldn't it?
South Africa, yeah.
It's Winton
there's
Kid, isn't it?
scenes in South Africa, yeah, that's it, with Winton Kid. And he's also in Cairo. Do you remember at the start when he's looking for Blofeld, and the guy goes, "Where is he? Cairo!"
Yeah.
And then, that's brilliant. Yeah. Diamonds. Any others?
So that would be Spy Who Loved Me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Where's Feckish?
Elements.
Diamonds Are Forever. Spy Who Loved Me.
There's a Timmy.
Is it Timmy? He doesn't go to Africa, does he?
North Africa.
Oh, of course, Morocco. Yeah. Okay, Living Daylights.
Goes to Tangier.
Yeah. I'm rubbish at this one. There's one more, is there?
There's two. One which you would know, and one which is a bit of a cheeky one. It's in a pre-title, kind of a pre-title sequence, and there's lots of running involved. And jumping.
That would be Casino Royale.
Yeah, he's in Madagascar.
That's Madagascar, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Does Madagascar count as Africa or not?
Yeah. It's an island, but it counts as part of Africa. And there's also the bit where Bond's not there, but when Lashifa's in Uganda, where he's
of course, yeah, you're right, yeah.
So that's pretty much all of them. The only other one, well, Never Say Never Again, we won't go to, but the only other one, which is a bit sneaky, is in Moonraker after the title sequence. In the pre-title sequence, Bond asks Moneypenny, M asks Moneypenny, is Bond back from the African job yet? And then Moneypenny says, he's on his last leg, sir. And then he's in the aeroplane and we go to the whole parachute thing with George chasing him. Yeah. But that was a super sneaky one.
That's a good one.
That.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting as well because they were going to film Skyfall in South Africa.
That's right.
Initially, but I still think that would be a wicked location. At some point.
That's a classy location that hasn't been used yet. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so we'll see.
Okay, so let's do some Boyd facts.
Yeah,
Boyd facts. So I'll kick off. My first Boyd fact is William Boyd used Bond creator Ian Fleming as a character in his novel Any Human Heart. Fleming recruits the book's protagonist, Logan Mountstuart, to naval intelligence during World War II. Nice.
I think that's a great fact. Yeah. And do you think that had a helping hand with the Fleming estate, perhaps?
It must have done.
I think so,
but
yeah.
I'm going to have to read that book now. That sounds good.
Yeah.
And then number 2 for me is Boyd worked with Sean Connery on a film called A Good Man in Africa, which was a book and the screenplay that he wrote as well. He worked with Brosnan on a film called Mr. Johnson, where he wrote the screenplay, and he directed Daniel in a film about World War I called The Trench. So he's a multi-talented fellow, is our William Boyd.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive he's worked with them all.
Not only is he writing the books, he's writing the screenplays, and he can direct the movies as well, which is more of a range of skill than Fleming had, as we previously learned.
Yeah. Okay, so a few more Boyd facts. So Boyd was born in Ghana and grew up in Nigeria before moving to the UK in his 20s. So he lived for the first sort of 20-odd years of his life in Africa. Obviously, that helped when doing sort of a book like this and influenced Solo. And for background, before he started writing Solo, Boyd read all of the Bond stories within sort of narrative order, which was quite interesting. Yeah. And the writing process took 18 months. And this is an interesting fact. So William Boyd actually had a number of arguments with the Fleming estate over his use of the portrayal of Bond. And they were arguing that he was too much of an assassin in the book. And Boyd was like, well, this is how I'm having him. And he's not. This is how Fleming sort of said it. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting one, I thought. But.
Interesting. Yeah. Chances are we won't be having him back then.
Yeah. Well, probably not in that case.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So you know what time it is? It's time for you to rack out my favourite jingle.
It's Bond, 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 Bond. James Bond.
I love it. Very nice.
It's a good one. Cool. So I think the last one was one that I did, wasn't it? So I'll have to do that again. Yep. And then we can bring in special guest quotes as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
After that. Okay, so just in case you don't remember that, my quote from last time was, we must find him.
Okay, so when you said that last time, I was stumped. Yeah. But then it just jumped into my mind, and I think I might have it. I'm not 100% certain, but I think I might have it. Is it Elliot Carver on the stealth boat?
No, no, it's not. It is. Well, you got it right in terms of a villain talking about Bond.
Yeah,
it's a Rog film, and Bond is like sneaking about the villain's place, and the villain goes to Bond's bedroom and he's not there, and then he goes, we must find him.
Oh, that's Zorin, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Excellent. Well done, Zorin. So it'd be if any of the listeners got that, then let us know on Facebook or stuff. It was quite a tricky one.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can hear it now, but I do, because I wondered whether, I can't remember whether Carver says we must find him or he just says find him. But do you remember that bit where Bond sneaks onto the stealth boat and they see him on the cameras?
Yes, that's right.
So
I don't know if he definitely says like find him, doesn't he? He might say we must find him.
Very good.
But
Okay, interesting.
So, and then I like the fact that seconds after that, Mayday opens her bedroom and Roger's like in her bed going, hey.
A funny story about that actually. My fiance's father, his favourite Bond girl is Mayday.
Really?
That's the first time I've ever come across that.
No, I can see why in terms of the character, just because she's like so outlandish and memorable and crazy, and she goes from being bad to good and self-sacrifice. So from that point of view, I can see it. From the other side of things, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, me either. But there we go. Okay, so my quote of the day is...
Right.
Good. Right on schedule.
Interesting.
Actually, I need to pronounce that slightly better, so I'm going to perform it again.
Okay.
Good. Right on schedule.
Ah, that's an interesting one.
Okay, do you reckon you've
one.
got that?
I like it. I'll have to have a little think, but I think it might be on the tip of my tongue.
Okay, all right. Now, as we passed it out to the listeners last time, we have a guest listener quote, which we're going to play for you now.
Hello there, it's Matthew Grice, and here's my quote for this week. It's nothing personal, it's purely business. Okay, see you soon.
So, who do you reckon that is?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Matthew Grice, for sending that in, because it was a wicked quote and, superb. So I know when I first heard it and I said to you, a meeting at an airport and I didn't really explain myself, but that was the fact that you met the guy who I think it is. It's just the way that he said, it's purely business. That made me business, which made me think of Sanchez in License to Kill.
Oh, well, that's exactly who I think it is as well.
Oh yeah, Robert Davi, Sanchez, License to Kill.
I thought you.
Hence, you met him in the airport.
Yeah, I did. I thought you thought it was. I thought you thought it was Karen Bay Karen Bay. Sorry, Karen Bay's son. When he's driving Bond and the other guys are tailing him, it's nothing personal, it's just business, and it's just what they do. That's what I thought you thought it was, because of the picking up at the airport. But Sanchez. So there we go, Matthew Grice. Let us know on Facebook if we've got it right. We both reckon it's Sanchez. But it was the way you said business that kind of made me...
I think he nailed it. Good. Excellent. And now if anyone else wants to put in a quote for next time, then please... head over and leave a voicemail for us and we'll play it on air next time.
Yeah, just go to jamesbondradio.com and there's a little button on the right-hand side that says leave us a voicemail. Just click that. You can do it through your computer. You don't need to pick up your phone or anything. We'd definitely like to hear some more. So there we go. So that's about it for today. It's been fun. Our very first full-on book review. I really enjoyed it. It's cool. It's good to branch out. I think, absolutely. Now, next time, it's going to be another book-related one. We've actually got an interview with Matthew Parker, who's written a book called GoldenEye, which is all about Fleming's Jamaica. It's actually called GoldenEye, Where Bond Was Born in Fleming's Jamaica. And it's actually going to be out. The release date of the book is going to be out on the day of the podcast, so 2 weeks from today. So we're going to be interviewing him and talking all about Fleming and Jamaica and GoldenEye, which is going to be quite fun.
And do we get tickets to go to GoldenEye to visit, just so we can, get a full feel for it?
I think he said he'd sort us out in that department. Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
I don't think he said he'd sort us out with plane tickets and all the rest of it. So yeah, that's going to be cool. Maybe we'll do the podcast from Fleming's bedroom in
well, that's what I thought we were. Yeah. I thought that's where we were doing it from.
I was thinking, now we've had a bit of success with this podcast and we've built like an audience. We're going to have to start getting a bit more prima donna, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? And sort of making demands and things like that.
Well, I've heard that's how you succeed in the world.
I'll be in my trailer and all that kind of stuff, and all the rest of it. But
well, I'll be able to afford a fan if it's hot next week.
There you go. Welcome to the big time. All right.
No, I'm looking forward to that. It'll be good.
Cool.
Good to interview him.
Okay, so James Bond Radio will return with an interview with author Matthew Parker about his book GoldenEye. Until next time, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright.
And we'll see you soon. Take care and thanks for listening.
See you next time. Bye.